Story of the Stone is a Chinese novel written primarily by Tao Xue with some help from Gao and was published in 1791 at the end of the 18th century. The novel focuses on the Jia family in Nanking and primarily follows the journey of Xue Baochai as he navigates his life with his female cousins in their garden living space for most of the story. Overall, Tao comments on many aspects of Chinese society, culture, and everyday life in the work, but there is an undeniable focus from the opening pages of the novel through its closing pages on the feminine and women's literacy in society. In the century and a half preceding the publication of Tao's novel, there were many pieces of Chinese poetry and literature that were either written by women or commented on the role of women in society. Paul Ropp in 1976 and Susan Mann in 1997 provide a litany of examples of the rethinking of women's position in society over these years. Ropp highlights the changing tides that take place in the centuries predating Story of the Stone that emphasize the agency of women and their ability to skillfully make compelling literary art themselves. Mann then highlights that, quote, girls who were barred from taking examinations or holding office, and who were not groomed with these goals in mind, had no clear use for their writing. This is what makes women's writing so powerfully revealing about ideas of gender difference in pre-modern Chinese society. Whenever a woman wrote, the purpose of writing, not simply the quality of it, was subject to scrutiny and evaluation, praise or blame. Tao Xue and his work stand toward the end of the period investigated by these scholars, and the conflict in his views of whether women's literacy shows in the contentious relationship between two characters, Lin Daiyu and Xue Baochai. There is an incident that highlights this well in Story of the Stone in Chapter 42 where Baochai censors Daiyu for quoting from Peony Pavilion and The Western Chamber, two Chinese romantic dramas. Baochai, in her remonstration of Daiyu, plays the role of the traditional Neo-Confucian, a role that she plays throughout the novel. Daiyu, in opposition to this, plays the role of a different conception of women that was developed before the novel in other areas in Chinese literature and poetry of the educated upper-class woman who is a poet who possesses great poetic talent and knowledge. This is illuminated best in a short poem from earlier in the novel where Tao writes, one was a pattern of female virtue, one a wit who made other wits seem slow, where the first is referring to Baochai and the second line is referring to Daiyu. Neo-Confucian views of the time held that educated, literate women needed to be literate only so that they could read enough to improve their etiquette, filialness, and faith. According to this belief, women were only supposed to read classics and were to focus on texts that would make them better daughters, wives, and mothers. The practical reality of the time, though, was that literate women had a much wider range of materials at their disposal and sometimes managed to contribute to poetry and literature themselves. They did not only merely contribute, though, but they also made great works. Tao's scene here plays into the conflict between these two ideals, and his resolution of the incident and the continuation of the two characters points to his contribution to the conversation. The conflict at play in the scene, though, is not just a commentary on external Chinese perspectives on women at the time, and speaks to the larger plot of the novel. Daiyu and Baochai are the two girls who are most often thought of as being potential future brides for Baoyu throughout the story. Daiyu, as the novel develops later, is Baoyu's ideal wife, as her flouting of values that can be seen in this scene mirrors how Baoyu operates in his own life. Baochai, on the other hand, generally annoys Baoyu by trying to act as a corrective force in his life. Of course, the Jia family eventually chooses Baochai to be Baoyu's wife, but at the great cost of his mental health as he cannot bear to not get married to his true love, Daiyu. The scene between Lin Daiyu and Xue Baochai is exemplary of what Tao does well throughout the novel. The characters' interactions contribute to the narrative while simultaneously foreshadowing future plot events and providing a commentary of Tao's views on society. In the novel, Tao generally leans toward giving agency to literate women, but the end of the novel with Baochai's becoming Baoyu's wife represents the reality imposed by society at large, where Neo-Confucian values win out.